Hello, welcome to this video looking at Our Country's Good for Drama A-Level. I'm using the EQA exam board. However, I'm not actually sure if this play comes up in any other exam boards, but if it is usable, it's useful. So, we're going to start off by looking at context and background. I'm going to go into a lot of detail because there's not many resources on the internet for drama A-Level, the exam side of it, like the actual written exam. So this might be helpful to anyone who's struggling to access the content at college or secondary school. Timberlake Wertenbaker, who was the writer of the play, she was born in 1956 in New York, moved to France, went to university in the US where she began her writing career and lecturing career. And she decided she wanted to write for theatre in London, so she came over to the UK from the 1980s. She wrote Our Country's Good in mind of with the actors in mind. She therefore knew what they were capable of and their acting style and the chemistry they had. She built up a foundation of ideas, structures, and created scenes. She spoke to officers, militants, and convicts and discussed the treatment and tried to get a very good image of that. And she aimed to present different characters with their own backgrounds and history to add depth and layering to the performance and character arcs. She created scenes and messages that are universal. She's good. She based the play on the novel by The Playmaker, and I think this might have been the play that they were performing. Yeah, the play that they were performing in the play. That's because it's a play within a play. The Playmaker is set in Australia during the early colonial era. The Playmaker tells the story of the great migration of mentally ill people, debtors, crime, and other marginalised people from elsewhere in British Empire to populate Nassau colonies. The people were thought to be sentenced to death, but instead were given a new place to build their lives. The novel follows the rehearsal of a play by Farquhar, a playwright living in Sydney, which ironically can only be memorised and performed by the Australia illiterate population. Like a novel itself, the play reflects the public ambivalence on the inexorable progression of British colonisation and the inequalities of the crime justice system. She also used French theatre as she grew up with a French education, and this kind of inspired her to become a playwright. And then she was also inspired by London playwrights who were writing great big epic plays, shared experience plays, and this kind of gave her the idea and the imagination to explore the relationships between our own lives and the worlds we inhabit. So, style. It is an episodic nature, suggested multi-rolling, cross-gender casting, shows a non-naturalistic performance style, and doesn't typically fit epic theatre style, even though it's an episodic structure, as the characters are intended to be well-rounded to promote emotional reactions, and a more naturalistic approach with the development of the characters is appropriate. No two scenes are the same, and the scenes are intended to be comical, and there are some scenes displayed with extreme brutality endured by the convicts and the scenes that require sensitive direction to highlight the relationship between characters. She kind of looks at the fixing the not but to show all the sensitivities of the characters and their personality. So not fixing what's wrong with them, but showing it in a different light, if you get what I mean. Background. We've got the play when it was originally performed. It was performed with English director Max Stafford Clark. Endowed with the large-scale production of Farquhar alongside the recruiting officer, he hired 10 actors to perform both plays, each one performing a convict and an officer. Our Country's Good, written by Timberlake Wertenbaker, is based on true events of the transportation of British convicts, and those events are based on the Keynes novel. Follows the recruiting officer's story, directed by the second lieutenant Ralph Clark, and the central character in Our Country's Good. The convicts are largely uneducated and uncouth convicts, and the group is fairly disgruntled officers transporting the convicts. The voyage of Botany Bay, a modern-day Sydney, took 8 months, and they were thousands of miles away from British homes. It focused on the characters and their relationships. Setting-wise, with a large cast with 22 different scenes, it is vital to have acute awareness how different aspects of the production should look like. You should consider transitions and stage types. So most useful would probably be end on, thrust, or proscenium arch. I've obviously got the scenes listed below, which I'm pretty sure is everything that takes place. So we've got a hold of a convict ship, Ralph Clark's tent, the officers' quarter, a prison stage house called Aborigine separate area, Sydney Cove audition / rehearsal space, a rowing boat within water, a beach, and a backstage. Obviously, these are very versatile stages, so you've got to try and think how you'd put this all on the stage with quick transitions as well. So, officers. The script revealed the rising tensions between officers on the voyage as complex relationships with the convicts too. The colony is presidented over by Captain Arthur Phillip, a liberal whose beliefs of civilization and rehabilitation set him apart from others and more irrational officers. The other officers oppose him. Lieutenant Ralph Clark agrees with rehabilitation of the convicts and created a coherent ensemble. The convicts are a range of people from many different backgrounds. Each convict had been guilty of a crime, but given the opportunity to be transported rather than hung. So, themes-wise, sorry, I've got a piece of paper full of notes in front of me. We've got power and relationships, sexual relationships and intimacy, brutalisation, punishment, redemption, rehabilitation, the value of theatre, language, silence and voice, guilt and innocence, nation and colonialism, and governance and justice. So, context-wise, we're going to start off with power and disease. In the 18th century, there was a huge gap between the rich and poor. King George III lived a life of luxury, and many people in London were starving. Typical working class families, children were an economic asset, therefore sent out to work from the age of 6. Most children worked in families carrying out physically demanding tasks for very small wages. Homes were basic and often infested with mould. Overcrowding led to disease, sewage ran through houses onto the street, and the death rate were high in the slums. London saw a rapid baby boom and a rise in birth rate, and the population doubled. Lack of jobs and median wages for the growing population resulted in many people turning to crime to make a living. The government reacted to this increase in crime in using capital punishment. Both women were sentenced to death for serious crimes such as murder, as well as seemingly more trivial crimes such as theft. Growing crime rate. As the crime rate grew and prisoners became more crowded, the government formed a plan to get rid of the country of growing number of criminals, and one of the first solutions was using a ship along the Thames. These ships became prisons where prisoners ate, slept, and during the day were taken ashore to work. In 1986, as a result of poor living conditions, the prisoners aboard one of the hulks rebelled, resulting in the death of 8 prisoners. The problem with overcrowding could have been solved by transporting the prisoners to other lands, and this is where penal colonies were established. The first fleet / convict ships. Thought in the late 1700s, Britain sent many of its convicts to American colonies, and this provided American colonies with labour. But by 1775, the American colonies refused to accept any more convicts. In replacement for America, the government sent convicts to a newly discovered land known as the New South Wales, which is Australia. They believed that this was a remote land and it would serve and settle the prisoners. 11 ships were contained enough supplies to keep 759 convicts and their marine guards, some with families and a few civil officers. These ships were led by Captain Arthur Phillip. The fleet set sail in 1987, journeying with virtually unknown shore for 8 months long. Before the ships even embarked on their journey, some of the convicts had been aboard the ship for 7 months prior, and on the expedition 23 deaths were recorded, and every adventure that was later on had less death. When they arrived at Botany Bay, the area was dry, infertile, unsuitable for farming. To make matters worse, very few convicts knew how to farm. During the time on the ships, the convicts were kept below deck and were allowed on deck for a set period of exercise, but they were behind bars and restraints with chains. Everyone aboard, from the convicts to Captain Phillip, was on ration food. Beginning of the voyage, the convicts were handed over to the master of the ship. He was responsible for the prisoners and the prisoners' welfare, and it strongly relied on him. Some masters demanded harsh discipline on board of the ships and physically punished the prisoners. Aborigines. Before 1988, Australia was populated about 300,000 Aborigines. They were Normandic wanderers, had inhabited the land for over 10,000 years. They had little contact with any humans, especially Europeans at this point, and the Aborigines were seen as uncivilized as they did not cultivate the land. Captain James Cook, the 18th century explorer and navigator. Cook discovered the east coast, what is now known as Australia, naming it New South Wales, and had reported to the British government as a good place for settlement. Penal colonies. The vast growing population of Britain was one of the contributing factors to major crime growth. Americans became independent, which means Britain was unable to send convicts there, and the only way to combat overcrowding in British prisons was to establish a penal colony using the land discovered by Captain James Cook. So we're going to break down each of the scenes. So, scene 1, act 1, the voyage out. This is the only scene that's on the boat, so think about how you'd set this out. The atmosphere is tense, uncomfortable, unnerving, desperation. Ralph seems bored, desensitised against the lashings. Clark, the lashings' barely audible voice. Foreshadowing, homesickness. This creates curiosity. The sound of whipping, ocean waves, hush counting, muttering, banging, and jangling, composing the sound. And underneath, I'm going to have like each section, if there is characters that you can really speak about, I've just put some underneath, so as a breakdown. So Mary Brennan, a kind, caring, compassionate girl. Arscott is hungry, wise hammer, articulate, educated, poetic. He uses profanities to show he is a lower class and is just as undervalued in society. Act 2. A lone Aborigine in Australia describes the arrival of the first convict fleet in Botany Bay in the 20th century. Confusion, terror, acts to recap, narration, catalyst, and it shows that they are keeping their distance. And think about how you would have the Aborigine on stage, because in the whole play he doesn't make or they don't make direct contact with anyone in the fleet. So would you have them positioned at the back of the stage, above, at the front of the stage? You've got to think about all of these. Scene 3, Act 1. Punishment. Philip questions the point of the journey because of the continued hanging. He wants to be more humane to the convicts. He wants the convicts to be given a fair opportunity to change, but he would kill a bird carelessly, which is quite a juxtaposition. He's open-minded and kind. Tench. He's by the book. He's abrupt and bash. He sees draw away and punishment is final. Justice and humaneness have never gone hand in hand. He goes either way. He's desensitised, referring to the number of lashes until exposure, is very sarcastic. Collins, a diplomat, neutral. He believes they are here for punishment, not education. The men are bird shooting and conversing the nature and nurture of humanities of the penal colonies. Scene ends with an 82-year-old woman hanging herself due to fear of being hung by somebody else. And this is where we have the first kind of bit of tragedy, I'd say. Scene 4, Act 1, The Loneliness of Men. Isolation, distance, there's a haunting undertone. Two men are having two polarising conversation. Ralph Clark is on about the job promotion, while Harry Brewer is guilty and paranoid about the hanging of Handy. Tense, awkward, informal, cathartic, very selfish conversations, and the men discuss the Aborigines in a racist way. Ralph Clark is reserved but reflective. He discusses the job in a passionate way. He thinks the convicts deserve punishment, particularly the female convicts, however holds his wife on a pedestal. He wants the promotion, he wants to please the captain, distasteful attitude towards the convicts and very dismissive. He obviously says, "My beloved Alicia, how could you treat women with such kindness? His Excellency will notice me." He's referring to Arthur Phillip. He wants to be praised by the captain. Harry is an admirer. He reflects on his own life. He doubts Harry's committed the crime of embezzlement. He understands the captain believes that redemption. He believes in the redemption of the wrong. Harry feels guilty and has a guilty conscience. Harry's the hangman of the colony, haunted by the ghost of those who he's hung. Internal taunts from Hansky Baker, especially his sexual relationship with Ducklin. Harry saved Ducklin's life, but in thing is controlling over Duckling. You don't think I killed him then? I wouldn't want her to be looked at by all those men. What if they found out I used to be an embezzler? I saw Handy Baker last night. Ralph, he's come back. This shows that there has been pre-paranoid thoughts from Harry. Act 5, Scene 1, the audition. The atmosphere here is fun and jokey. Meg is outspoken, often cheeky and trifling. She perceives everything as a sexual innuendo and insinuates she was a sex worker. She is comical and uses dark humour to desensitise her situation and is forthcoming. "We heard you were looking for some women, Lieutenant. Here I am. You know when you want me, old shitty Meg. You want women, you ask Meg." Think about how she would say this. If she's very forthcoming, she's going to be blunt. She's going to be a bit in your face. So maybe close in her proximity to Ralph, be like, "Here I am." Like, be really dramatic with it, because she is quite older and she's kind of been grinded down by society and finds humour in a situation to cope. Dabby, she's the best friend of Mary. She explains her character in the play as being the best friend. She hypes Mary up. She interrupts and is excitable. She desperately wants to be involved and will not take no for an answer, controlling and overbearing and not intimidated by Ralph. "Oh, I like it, Lieutenant." "Well said, Mary, well said. I want to play Mary's friend, a girl who has no one to talk to. She needs her friend, a captain, Mary." Mary is shy and quiet. She shows signs of outgoingness. Mary listens to authority but can't ever get a word in due to Dabby being overbearing. She's educated and she's quite fluent in speaking and reading. Liz is standoffish, confident and blunt. It's kind of said she's an enemy to Dabby and violent, holding her to the ground, each ready to pounce. Is that it? She snatches the book from Ralph. She is a very reserved female character, and she's one that's kind of like against the officers and is openly quite aggressive. Ralph, he was perceived by other members of the ship because he doesn't want to take sexual advantage of the convicts. He isn't swayed by Meg and her sexual innuendos. He is kind towards those who are more educated, like Mary. He is intimidated by strong women, like Liz and Meg. He doesn't like to discuss sex with women, especially convicts. Ralph isn't a particularly intimidating officer on the ship. You don't understand long. I would like to hear you. That's excellent, Brennan. Very fluent. Sideway, poetically sensitive. He often refers to memories of comfort. He is cheeky and joyous. He spends a lot of time in Drury Lane, which is a famous area in London known for theatre, and this is where he picked up the cultural capital. He is very well mannered, refers to Mr. Garrick, a famous theatre actor at the time. He is proud of his pickpocketing skill and believes he is a gentleman because pickpocketing is a talent. He is a charmer and understands theatre better than anyone else. Robert Sideway comes straight on. He does a flourish, which is like a bow. Mr. Clark, the glory of the day, Drury Lane, ladies. 6 Acts 1, we kind of see how the officers are sitting on the argument of redemption. So this is the authorities discuss the merits of theatre. Late at night, the men are drinking and tempers are high. Foreshadows Mary Brennan. Robbie Hoskins against the play is very confrontational. He is ignorant. Campbell is drunk, he has disjointed dialogue, his words aren't coherent at all, and is kind of a sheep to Robbie Ross. Dawes is not aware of the conversation, transitions it to a lunar eclipse or astrology. Philip reinforces the importance of theatre in society. He wants the convicts to be better in society. He wants them to be redeemed, and often takes a nature versus nurture argument. Colin flicks between the two arguments. Compassionate supports Ralph ultimately as smart and intelligent. Reverend Johnson is very traditional. He doesn't want the convicts to learn about Catholicism. He's signed to sway his decision as it's pro-marriage. He strongly focal his arguments around God. Clark speaks shyly to his superior, struggling to please everyone or his superiors. He has found his voice. He mainly supported from Revel Philip. Ralph, when talking about the female convicts, the tone has changed. We then have Tench, has a strong dislike for convicts, and Faddy likes to stir the pot between tensions between him and Ralph are high, and Mate Snod remarks for Ralph. Then Act 1, Harry and Duckling go rowing. This is obviously showing their very toxic relationship. They only engage in small talk. Duckling seems uncomfortable and does not want to be there. There's very patriarchal behaviour. The pace at this point probably should be sped up. This is at the most toxic point in their relationship as well. The relationship is a sexual exchange for luxury that comes with dating an officer. Both use endearing tones to manipulate each other. Powerful shift to favour Duckling. Maybe love underneath all that toxicity. Harry's possessive and controlling and is easily annoyed from his paranoia. Duckling is sulking. Duckling is ignoring him. She feels trapped. She wants freedom. Scene 8, Act 1, the women learn their lines. Dabby prostitutes Mary out. She wants to go home. Forthcoming about sex. She does obviously this to Mary so her and her husband can eat. Dabby believes she kept Mary in much better position than other women. Mary is nervous. She wants to impress. She is inferior to Dabby. She regrets of her past sexual experience, and it's kind of hinting that she has a crush on Ralph. Liz, friction between Liz and Dabby. Liz is demanding. Liz is nervous around the idea of acting and lacks confidence with reading, causing her to be abrasive. Liz Morden just wants to learn her lines. Ketch is newly appointed handman as well as a convict, which makes him a trader in the colony. Liz, Dabby and Mary turn on Ketch together. He is a traitor, but he is trying to be friendly. Scene 9, Act 1, Ralph Clark tries to kiss his dear wife's pictures. Ralph is religious. His private time, he expresses his dear love for his wife and sees convicts only as sinners. Complete lack of empathy. He obviously says, the dream of my Betsy Alicia, get on with it, I'm not a convict, I do not sin. He sees himself above convicts. Ketch is respectful, apologetic of stepping into somebody else's space, forgive me sir, questioning himself and questioning religious powers. Catholic, looking for God's forgiveness, feels abandoned by God, he seeks the validation of God and religion. He was persecuted as he was striking for workers' rights, but as a personal attack, he kept working, and this contributed to assault. The man died, and he was kind of given an ultimatum, which was hang or give names to be hung. Guilty conscious. He follows the crowd. He's accepted that it is his job, and he doesn't know how God will ever forgive him for his sins yet. Therefore, he cannot die until he is forgiven. He wants a romantic relationship and kind of yearns this respect that he's lost from all the other convicts. Scene 10, Wisehammer and Mary exchange words. Words are an important base on interpretation. References to a capitalist society. If you aren't working, you are useless. Both use words to represent their feelings. Highlights the contradicting nature of words, uses their intelligence and inexplicitly try to share their feelings, and this is a flirty tone here. Wisehammer, doing manual labour, intelligent but a man without hope, feels about reference in the world's country. He feels that he's been treated unjustly. He is lonely and loveless. Worlds with two L's are the worst, lonely and loveless. This is obviously an opposition and a juxtaposition, because they also so similar to be lonely, which might mean you are loveless. Mary is copying books. She is plagued by guilt. Guilty is an uglier word, continually thinking about others and others' interpretations of her. Act 11, the first rehearsal. This is a comedic scene. Mutual respect is starting to take place. The prisoners have run away. Happy tones plummet rapidly as the rivals of Robbie Ross. So, Ralph's theatrical approach and role model of theatre etiquette feels and tries to control the chaos, polite towards Mary and Liz, and uses the word please. Which he could say that under his breath because he doesn't want to be seen that way by the other officers. Dabby, ridiculous commentary, it's foreshadowing, she's angry. Mary's attentive on Ralph, she wants to receive the praise off of him. Sideway is dramatic, a show off. You may call me Mr. Sideway, he's very flamboyant, he's threatened by other pickpocketers. He's exaggerated and does not respect boundaries. Liz is very pessimistic. She doesn't really want to speak. She feels very awkward, snapping, changing attitude towards her own, punished for no really reason that's evidenced. Ketch is also attentively listening to Ralph. Ducklin uses her officer privilege as an advantage, dismissing, and she goes, I want to play something else. Wisehammer going on about words again. Caesar very dominating, he's chill and nonchalant, he just wants to be a part of the play. Ross intimidates the convicts, threatens the convicts with death, and Campbell just mumbles and rambles on. So, scene 1, act 2 is visiting hour. Liv talks about the vulnerability of being the guilty one, though all odds were placed against you. I take my dad's cudgel and tried to kill him. She is distinct and feels both angry and sad. Feelings of hopelessness. Arscott, there is no escape. Caesar has a longing approach. He wants to go home. His morals is to die at home, and if I die here, I will have no spirit. There's two opposing attitudes here, pessimists and optimists. I'm going to talk about the end and how you could stage a lot of this. So, there you go. Scene 2, he excellently exhorts Ralph. Ralph is dismissed by Philip. Ralph is very judgmental. Philip is literal. He believes everyone has a chance, even Liz Morden. He feels responsible for the prisoners as it's his duty. There is excellency in everyone. Ralph lacks anger, reinforces his arrogancy and is to test and has to stop himself. Really reinforces the message to play. In a world itself, a tiny colony, you are in charge of it. It's a great responsibility. Act 3, Harry Buressy is dead. Stage direction at the start, speaking in different voices of a tormenting ghost. Quite fast and frantic, Harry is desperate. He is vulnerable at the beginning and becomes clingy towards the end. Harry relies on Ducklin but does not trust her. He sees her as a prostitute. He sexually objectifies her. They care about each other more than they let on. There is very intense eye contact. Once she hears he's obviously not well, Ducklin rushes on. However, they only stay together due to the status, survival and security that each other give one another. Scene 4, Lost. The Aborigine muses on the nature of dreams. Lost Soul, we see the point of view from the Aborigine. The audiences shift towards this message. How can we live with those we disdain? How can we befriend this disturbed dream? So how do we kind of live amongst criminals who have supposedly done wrong to society? You could sit him close to the audience. Like he breaks in, here's this middle view, here's this barrier between the audience and the convicts. We all have to live with evil, but not all those who commit evil are evil. Scene 5, the second rehearsal. Prisoners are in chains after previously trying to run away. Ross is dominant in the scene. He is confident and pompous. He humiliates the convicts, mentions sideways urinating on his boots when he's being lashed, and told Dabby to get on all fours. Convicts splutter when speaking, punishment as a theme, silent expect for the beating, togetherness with all the convicts helping each other. She loses her line, Sideway tries to prompt her, which is the first time we're seeing kind of unity within the colony. They move frantically on a lower level because Ross is kind of treating them like animals, so they are told to get on all fours and kind of act as animals. 6. Measuring the rope to hang Liz. Kex is trying to be gentle with Liz, respects her. He's apologetic. He's trying to say he won't hurt her. He's pleading for Mrs. Brewer to talk to the lieutenant. Harry's aggressive, frustrated and haunted by his decision. He's flicking back and forth between Tom Barnett's voice of who he's hanged prior and Handy. Liz said she didn't steal the food. She tells the truth. She'll tell the truth after she's dead. Tell the lieutenant I didn't steal the food. Please tell the lieutenant. She's kind of starting to care what others perceive her as somebody has finally showed her kindness and forgiveness, and she's not been shown that often in life, so she wants to show Ralph that she didn't actually do anything wrong. She is being measured for a hanging for no reason. 7. The meaning of plays. The Aborigine wants to distinguish what he and his people could possibly do to satisfy, thus gets them to leave. Wisehammer is confessing his love for Mary. He wants to marry her. Dabby believes sex is a contract. Dabby makes a dig at Ralph for liking Mary. Mary doesn't understand the concept of love and she thinks love is a contract. Love triangle between Wisehammer, Mary and Ralph. Wisehammer offers to marry Mary after asking her to choose him. Ralph is jealous over Mary. He longs along eye contact with Wisehammer. There's going to be high tensions here. He's like, he doesn't say he kissed Sylvia on stage. Theatre is a form of escape and challenging the mind. Wisehammer says, if it tells you what you already know, you leave as ignorant as you went in this. This is kind of the redemptive nature of theatre theme coming through and how theatre is educational. Dabby doesn't want a man playing the role that represents her because she wants a role that respects her story and she doesn't believe anyone else will do it justice. They all have an idea what theatre is, and it's almost, they see it as an escape to tell a story rather than educated versus entertained. They cannot rehearse properly. There is no unity in the performance. A lot of them saying they can't do the scene without the other when the others are being put to labour. Mary can't rehearse with Ketch as he is a hangman, and they refuse to work with the traitor even though it is not Ketch's decision. Scene 8. Ducklin makes vows. Quite abruptly, Harry is dead. Ducklin is distraught. If he hadn't died, if you had lived, she kind of repeats this. If you die, I will never forgive you. I will hate you. No, I love you. How could you do this? She wants love. Harry's death makes her vulnerable. It's probably the first time in her life that she's ever felt somewhat security, even though it wasn't perfect. She did love him. She feels betrayed by him. The emphasis on the if. Ducklin can drop to her knees, pulls his body towards him, and furrows her brows, stuttering and gasping. Scene 9, a love scene. Connection between Ralph and Mary. When he kisses her, they can have a nervous look between the two. It reveals the true feelings. They read the script. She looks at him, stares at him in daze. When he says Mary, talking to her for the character, he might drop the script to show that he's talking to her. They consummate their relationship. He holds her arm, touching her chin. Will you? Begins to undress her, seeing each other for who they are. This is an intimacy moment. Placing them under a pink spotlight with a baby pink hue might be a perfect way to show the intimacy in their relationship. Scene 10, the question of Liz, debating whether to hang Liz or not. And Liz has had the biggest character arc, so this is very important. Ross wants to hang solely on the fact she's a convict. He shouts she is guilty, rambling on the point the audience are convicts themselves. When he says we have 800, showing that the audience in front of them are classed as convicts, so Ross has isolated them. This obviously makes the audience sympathetic towards the convicts even more. Others believe there isn't enough evidence upstaging Ross his side, the right side of the stage. I'll come back to that in a second. Collins balances the arguments. He's like it's against her, but she is a convict. Philip uses a calmer tone as he wants to give the audience confidence. He has faith in Liz and wants the prisoners to be redeemed. Campbell is used for comedic effect. He's literally squealing with laughter. He's like a bit, whoa, what's going on? Like, he's meant to kind of take you away from the attention and be like, oh, we are watching a play and we need to think about this moral message. Liz finally speaks after a long silence, conflict internally. A long silence, I didn't steal the food. Makes Ross ignorant and look like a fool. He interrupts her, guilty, she didn't report it. And this is kind of a foreboding of hope. Lastly, we've got the last scene, which is the most powerful one, I'd say. So, the Aborigine is ill. There's a reality versus false sense of reality. Dabby, she's pleased with a small accomplishment. She's like, hooray, hooray, hooray. She's excited. She has dreams of Devon. She wants to leave. She doesn't want to die on this island. She wants to go back to Devon. She's still homesick and longing for home. The play has transformed. The character Dabby wants to leave is to show how far everyone else has come, because everyone else wants to stay and continue this society that they have built. Mary is trying to protect Ralph. Sideway wants a performance. The idea of the play being taken away from them has left them distraught, as it's like their liberation being taken away all over again. Shows the redemptive nature of theatre. Ducklin is distraught, making her an empathetic character. They've taken all of Harry's things. Ralph feeling sympathy towards her, he apologises. Harry was my friend. He feels guilty over leaving his wife and what's happened to Harry, so he will name his children after them, with Mary. Talking about their future and no criminal pathways, rehabilitation, if this is what Philip wants. Caesar wants Ralph wants him to be a part of the cohesive group. Caesar is committed and determined. Liz is trying to be kind and helpful. She has redeemed herself. She has a new shot at life. Let's go over your lines, and if you forget them, I'll whisper them to you. She has been shown kindness and it will act that way towards others now. Oscar is quite anxious. Prisoners don't know what happens after the play ends. Wisehammer wants to start a new life where there is no prejudice. He has hope for a new society. Themes are togetherness. Sideway starts to dream of starting a company and wants the others to join, showing that they've almost become a family. Duckling was worried if she loved or trusted somebody else, they would hurt her. I loved him, but now he will never know that. I thought he was going to become somebody cruel. Ralph and Mary love each other and want a life together. His original perception of prisoners have changed. Caesar doesn't want to be a disgrace to his ancestors. The play has the play has unified them as a group, and they have learned to tolerate him. The redemptive nature of theatre, the underlying artistic effects of the process. Ketch and Liz share a moment. Use the collective pronoun are. Wisehammer's prologue, this is kind of the most important thing, is a quote from George Barrington, who was a pickpocket who made it to Australia after his 8th conviction for pickpocketing. From the distant chimes of oh widespread seas we come, though not with much eclat or a beat of a drum, true patriots all, but for to be understood, we left our country for our country's good. No private views disgraced our general zeal, to what urged our travels was our country's will, and none will doubt that the immigration has provided the most useful to the British nation. This is kind of saying they left Britain to make a better society, as they were toxic to British society, but the colony that has been made in Australia is an even better society for the people, that has a new beginning as a fruitful life ahead for all of them. The style is eloquent writing, just supposes the idea that they are scrappy lowlives. The prologue is now a part of the play and they are passionate about the statements made. Finally, I'm just going to show costume and staging very quickly. So costume, I'm going to show you two ones. So this is kind of what the convicts are wearing. You've got to think of the ranking. So Captain Arthur Phillip is obviously the highest of the ranking. He's wearing blue. He has this navy blue coat with a gold trim. His ivory breeches, white scarf and stockings, black buckled shoes, black bicorn hat. A lot of them would wear the same. As you can see, this is very similar in Ralph, but Ralph is just wearing red because he's lower ranked, but he's still wearing with the white trim, ivory breeches. So just keep these in mind. I found these on Pinterest, and whoever made them is a fantastic artist, and it just helps you kind of see what he thinks. So think of like the colours of the British colony would be red and blue. Gold means you are higher up, white means you are lower ranked. For the prisoners, I've got obviously 2 prisoners, male and female, Dabby and Sideway. So Dabby is given kind of this olive green dress that is like thing. You want to have ripped, dirty fabric if you can. Find stuff that is going to look kind of like it's been put together, because they would have had very low budget of materials, whereas the men prior, who are the officers, would have had obviously nicer materials because they are agents of the British Embassy. Brown, white chemise and apron, brown men's convict shoes because they would have probably not housed them for women. White fabric, grey with dirt, torn. Think of browns, whites, greys, torn. You want to have almost probably like a little, try like a makeshift Cartier bust. The clothes are going to be ripped. Hair and makeup wise are going to be very minimal, kind of scratty. You'd imagine the hair would either be down but almost quite jagged and dishevelled. The boys are quite similar. Men's shoes, off-white shirt with linen, loose peasant pants, like almost like pantaloons, ripped. Shoes are basic, kind of like a tunic. If hair was long, it would have been tied back. If hair was short, it would have been kind of raggedy. So you want to look at the basic like peasant clothing. Think of your browns, greys. You want to have holes and jaggedness to it. Staging wise, I'm just going to quickly kind of draw through what I would kind of stage as to give you an idea. I'm just going to do this 1 second, I'll talk. Okay, I've kind of done a rough outline. It looks so bad, but just ignore it. Like, you're going to like sketch it probably in the exam to help you talk about it. So I'm just going to talk about what I've done. I've kind of done, if you look at the staging at the back, that's got the little things. I've kind of gone for a Hamilton vibe. And I've kind of made these like steps up to a higher platform where the characters can walk off, maybe move barrels and manual labour. The bit in the middle with the black line with the green spikes coming off of it, the green spikes is the tent that was used for Ralph, and the big pole is also being a multifunctional step for the hanging post that would have had kept at the top. The red things I've just done chain links falling down. I've made the platform of the stage another level, so this is where the kind of the officers would sit, and they are higher above because they have a higher status. The kind of purple things are like lanterns because they would have had more back then, and then beer barrels. On the lower bit, this is where the convicts would all be. I've got loose sheets of paper, wooden pallets. You had probably little buckets of water, probably leftover ripped clothes. So just kind of think about all these things that you could put in, if you get what I mean. And yeah, so just give it a good quick sketch, figure out things. It is quite a difficult play to set with just quite simple, but you've got to think when you go into exam, you've been given all the budget, so you can put whatever you like in there really. So I hope this video was helpful, and good luck with your exam.